Man, things around the NBA decided to heat up as soon as Trevor left for vacation, man. And we knew this was going to happen too because we're getting news constantly. And one of the things that we got today was an announcement from Shams about a new rule for the NBA. And the NBA is actually going to be investigating Malik Beasley. We're going to talk about that, give you guys a little look at the timeline and all that stuff and how things have gone this summer for Beasley specifically. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video here on the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe and let me know in the comment section down below for this rule specifically. Are you excited about this or do you not really care? I'm actually really excited about this. You may be wondering what rule it is. Let's go ahead and get into it. The NBA will be implementing a new change for the 25-26 season. Unsuccessful end-of-period heaves will now be recorded as a missed field goal attempt for the team and not the player. Sources tell ESPN those long heaves will no longer impact an individual player's percentages. And I replied on Twitter, finally! Feel free to follow me if you want to. But you know, you've seen it before where the guy they'll get the ball and they just won't even do anything with it because they don't want to heave and have it impact their 3-point percentage and all that stuff. You know, guys will say they don't care about that stuff, but I'm sure to some degree, all these guys care because it matters to them overall. And it matters in terms of like how they're perceived nationally for a lot of players. It also matters in terms of like the money they could potentially pick up. So that stuff matters, right? And so initial thoughts are that like a guy like Steph, because he doesn't typically care, he's going to see his percentage probably go up a little bit. I don't know how, it depends how many heaves they were doing, but he probably goes up a couple points. And then another thing you would see is you'd see the guys get the ball and then they do like one extra too many dribbles, like one dribble too many, and then they'll throw it up after. And so they technically heaved the ball, but it wasn't going to count even if they made it. So you know, I think this is a really cool change. It doesn't really impact anything negatively. We'll just maybe see more highlight opportunities as guys are less apprehensive about putting the ball in the air in those end of quarter situations, man. And to me, maybe you don't care about it, but I think it's a pretty good change that we're going to see. So let's talk about Malik Beasley here, and we will do so as well, starting quickly after a word from today's video sponsor.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using code Bulletin. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
All right, so Shams reported today that the NBA is now conducting their own investigation into Malik Beasley and the gambling allegations from earlier this summer. And that's pretty interesting because Beasley was recently, I don't want to say cleared because he's still technically a suspect. I'll get into that in a little bit. But he was basically removed from that stuff, right? And he was in a position where he could sign with a team. In fact, he had posted that he is somebody that he's going to be making his decision soon. Basically, he had posted that as well. And I don't know how this impacts that, but the NBA now themselves will be doing their own full-on investigation. So if you're not really fully aware of how all this works, let me show you this. So I pulled this up. Basically, there's differences here. So earlier in the summer, it was a federal investigation. And so the scope of that is U.S. Attorney's Office, and they're looking at it from like a criminal perspective. The NBA, they're looking at it from their own league rules, potential discipline, fines, suspensions, or bans. Like these are entirely different things. And so the federal status is he's no longer a target, but remains a quote unquote subject. The NBA one, of course, that's newly opened, and he is fully cooperating with that. In terms of implications on a federal scale, there's no criminal charges that were filed, signal of reduced legal risk, but not complete clearance. And then, of course, we're uncertain of the future of the NBA one, as this is something that is brand new and just starting overall for Beasley. And let's get into this article from Shams, but the NBA is conducting its investigation. The investigation stems from allegations of improper gambling on NBA games and prop bets from the 23-24 season when Beasley was with the Milwaukee Bucks, according to sources familiar with the matter. Beasley's attorney, Steve Haney, told ESPN that his client is fully cooperating with the NBA's investigation. So here's the thing. ESPN reported on June 29th that Beasley was under federal investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York at the time. The NBA said it was cooperating with that investigation. However, 2 months later, Haney told ESPN that Beasley was, quote unquote, not a target and had not been charged in the federal investigation, which has resulted in 4 guilty pleas related to a gambling scheme involving former NBA player Jonte Porter. The news of the federal investigation broke just before Beasley and the Detroit Pistons were set to complete a 3-year, $42 million contract, sources told ESPN. The offer was pulled, but other teams have expressed interest in Beasley, according to Sharania. In a recent Instagram post, Beasley wrote that he would be making his decision soon. That's what I was just talking about. The league investigation is believed to be in its final stages, according to a source familiar with the matter. Okay, so we're just hearing about it, but they're close to wrapping it up. Okay. At least one U.S. sportsbook detected unusual betting interest on Beasley statistics beginning around January 2024, according to a gambling industry source. So, we've been talking a lot about Pablo Torre, and he's broken a lot of stories. And I had talked about this in a video. I didn't name anything or anything like that, but I had mentioned how I had watched a very long video, and it was from Pablo Torre Finds Out, where he went through, like, similarly to the Kawhi thing, where he went through the Beasley thing with a fine-tooth comb, everything. And he had people that were saying that Beasley was in all this stuff. I am not judge, jury, execution, or any of that. But if you want more information, he did a similar thing to like the Kawhi thing that we're hearing a lot about on Beasley, about all that stuff prior to it being announced that the feds were no longer looking into Beasley as a target. So that's an interesting video I would seek out, because there was quite a lot in that, right, of people that were betting specifically on Beasley, and then there was one guy who was saying that basically Beasley was in on it. So again, quite a lot to this, but this does corroborate that, like, them saying that there was some weird betting around January 2024 for Beasley. And again, it's not from his Laker days, it's from his days with the Bucks as well. The source pointed to a game between the Bucks and Portland Trailblazers on January 31st, 2024. The odds on Beasley recording fewer than 2.5 rebounds moved significantly before the game, shortening from around plus 120 to minus 250 due to a surge of action on the under. Beasley finished with 6 rebounds, and the bet deemed unusual loss. Okay. So overall, though, this is quite the saga of just investigations on Beasley. I would assume that this will halt any decision he was potentially making. He's already missed out on big money. We talked about it previously when he announced that he was back on the market, when this stuff was mostly behind him before the NBA decided to jump in and do their own investigation. We talked about how his options were pretty limited. He could retain, going to Detroit, but it was for much less money. And then other than that, there were other options around the NBA that he could potentially take, but it wasn't going to amount to the amount that he lost as a result of this. I mean, we're talking about $42 million, right? He was very, very good for the Pistons last year and was due that big new extension. And ultimately, this has been quite a lot. So hopefully this does wrap up sooner than later, so we do get the resolution of this. And if Beasley is found to not have had any foul play and he's able to sign on a roster somewhere, hopefully we get that information soon so he can kind of just move on, right? But ultimately, though, this is kind of where it's at with a lot of these guys. I mean, we've been hearing more and more of this, especially since the Porter thing, about some of these unusual statistics on guys and how they're getting investigated and all this stuff. And to me personally, I just feel like if these guys are doing this stuff similar to Porter, I think they're just getting a little greedy, right? Like, you're already, personally, right, just to me, you're already making so much money. Like, I understand you want more money, but maybe not the right decision to put your entire livelihood on the line, right? So that being said, let me know what you guys think about all this. We're going to go through a very brief rundown that I had pulled up. It was already mostly mentioned here, but again, in June 29, 2025, the Associated Press reported that Beasley is under federal investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And then that moves to late summer, around June and July period. Reports surfaced that a 3-year, $42 million contract from Detroit was on the table, but it was pulled once the federal probe news broke. August 22nd is when Haney announced that he is no longer a target. So this is like literally just a couple of weeks ago. And then moving on to the 10th today, we have the new reports from ESPN that they're going to be looking into it. But the good news is, like I said, it does appear that it's in the later stages already. So they are going to be moving on from this pretty quickly. And as for the rule change, what other rules would you like to see implemented in the NBA or changed potentially around the NBA? Let me know in the comment section down below. But first, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe if this is your first time here. Thank you so much. We'll see you all in the next video.